Okay, are we? Do we have sound now? Do we have sound now? I'm not gonna sing, but I'll just keep talking. Well, Streamlabs updated yesterday, you see, and evidently, in its wisdom, it has decided that when you start a stream, you need to be muted. Of course, it used to default to sound, and if you wanted to mute yourself, you could. Evidently, the update, which wasn't mentioned in the new features that it gives you a list of, is there, and we have sound, we have picture. That's all for the good. So lovely to see you all here. I've seen a few of you. I've seen Beatrice, I've seen Susan, I've seen Dawn, Leslie, I've seen Claire, I've seen Trista, I think. I thought I saw Casey, I saw Julie there, I saw Cindy, I saw Leslie. Hello everybody who is here, and it's great to see you. And if I didn't mention you, Anne, I saw Anne as well. Hello Nicole, hello Lorna, great to see everybody here today. And it's a beautiful day here. Look at this. It is a summer's day really, which is not, it's nice to be able to say that, but really today, you know, it's been 24, 25 Celsius today, beautiful sunshine all day, blue sky. Definitely a day for being outside and having a little stroll around, and that's what we're going to be doing. And there's a lot of parked cars near where I am, people who've been here enjoying the local parks. There's a big country park quite close to here, which is actually where we're going to finish our tour, and I'm sure people have been out there enjoying that. And certainly there were, when I parked the car, next to where I parked the car was the beer garden of one of the local pubs, and that was being well enjoyed as well by people this afternoon. So fantastic, and it's nice to be in this lovely little town with you today. Have a nice stroll around, and we're going to just explore a little bit of the history. Hello Claire Lethargy, I know you are. Lovely to see you too. It's nice to have everybody here. And I do have my sunglasses on, which is just as well, because I discovered a little bit earlier that the little tiny screw was coming out of my regular glasses. I haven't lost the screw, which is good. It's still there, but I need to keep them very safe and make sure that when I get home I screw it back into place so they don't fall to pieces. Luckily I noticed before I came and started the tour. Hello Emma, how are you? Well, where are you, Emma? Are you still in captivity at the hospital, or have they let you go? You know, you said they were letting you go, but that's I don't know whether sometimes that can take a little while to actually happen. Thank you, Beatrice, for everybody's benefit. Beatrice has just posted the link there to the wish list section of my Buy Me a Coffee page, which is where these community funded tours are listed. I've got 2 up that are currently filling up the pot, so to speak. We got the Bewdley tour, which is a beautiful little town on the River Severn, lots of fantastic Georgian architecture, lovely riverside walks. And I also put another Cotswolds one up, because we've got the Cotswold one coming up, which is going to be in Chipping Norton, which is a new Cotswold place for us. And I thought, well, the Cotswolds are always so popular, let's have another Cotswold tour fund set up as well, so we can start building that up for the next one, and we'll go to another Cotswold trip. I don't know, all these people saying I've got a screw loose. I don't know how my sister in particular can say that when we are both descended from the same line. Claire, the only thing, the sort of thing a little sister can get away with, well, anybody can get away with it really on a virtual tour, because I'm not there to remonstrate with you. You know, you're all many miles away from where I am, so really anybody can say whatever they want, but I'm glad they don't generally. So yes, I'm hoping to resolve that loose screw later. She is indeed, Bluebird. Emma is a cheeky little sister, but I wouldn't have her any other way. Which is just as well, because I don't think she's going to change now. That's very true, Emma. Yeah, but you were... You got roast beef and Yorkshire pudding today, so you were the one who got the you were the one who got the nice dinner today. Oh, I might sneeze in a minute. I'm in quite a green area with a lot of grass. I think some of it's been cut. A little bit of hay fever. The pollen's got to get pretty high for me to start sneezing these days. Bluebird MB. Ah, hello. And hugs to Emma. Yeah, well, she did have one from me earlier, so how about that? How about we say that one was on behalf of everybody on the tour today? So yeah, Leslie definitely is here. Like I say, I used to suffer terribly with hay fever when I was a child and a teenager, but I never really have in adult life. But if the pollen count gets really high, particularly the grass pollen in the summer, I do suffer a little bit. It makes me sneeze. Yes, Emma, I do agree. Vegetarian meatball. It would just be nothing. I take the meat out of the meatball. What do you got left? It's a vegetarian spherical patty, perhaps. Leslie, yeah, you've been on the antihistamines. Sally Jane suffers a lot with hay fever. Yeah, most of the year as well. So I understand that. But yeah, it is. I think for me, I'm happy to be sneezing a little bit if it means that the sun is shining and the temperatures are nice and I can walk around in a t-shirt and enjoy the summer weather. That's kind of, I think that's a price I'm prepared to pay. But I know it does. It can be quite nasty when you have it a lot. When I was a teenager, I suffered a lot with streaming eyes and just really congested and really quite a lot of discomfort. But send some heat to Nova Scotia. Do you ever get any over there? What's the temperature like there now? Just bought you fish fingers, Emma. Oh, you see, oh, that's good then. They feed you up before they let you go. That's good. Dawn, you had a hay fever when you were doing your O-levels. Yeah, I actually had an injection when I was doing my A-levels at the end of school when I was 18, because I was a little bit worried that the hay fever would interfere with my exams, and the doctor said I could have a steroid injection that would pretty much give me make it kind of get me through the period of the exams without suffering too much. But strangely enough, it seemed to do better than that, because I never really had serious hay fever again. So it's very strange, a coincidence, I'm sure. But I had a few warm days. It won't be great till next week. We're into June. Can we believe it? It's June already. Where did that time go? It seems like a couple of minutes since New Year, doesn't it? And it certainly didn't rush by because the weather was so good. It's been wet and miserable for most of the time here, but time does fly, doesn't it? So nearly time to make a start, and lovely bird song I can hear as well, and the trees around me. And one of the things about being in a small town, in a rural area, is the fact that we have a lot of greenery. There's a lot of trees around, and yeah, it is a kind of a hay fever place. A place where, if you're susceptible to hay fever, being out in the countryside in a little town with lots of green space is kind of the place where it's going to come into play. So, oh, there goes somebody else sneezing as well. Just as we're, oh, there. Okay, well, I just heard the clock ticking around. Actually, I don't want to show my clock on yet, put my camera around yet. So I'm going to stand up. Any creaking you heard there was, honestly, that was the bench, that wasn't me. Although, you know, we are getting a bit that way these days, but that's me. So very, very warm, and literally a warm welcome to everybody today, because it's a beautiful day here in Market Bosworth in Leicestershire. Hello to Donna and Mitzi and some other people who just arrived. Polly, I just saw as well in the chat there. So big warm welcome to everybody, and delighted to have you here in this little town of Market Bosworth. Great name, and a lovely little place, and I'm really been looking forward to showing you around here. So let's make a start. I want to, as always on these community funded tours, thank everybody who has contributed, and thank you for making this possible, and so we can have these tours that are available for everyone. We've got a couple of new ones up at the moment, and a couple of others coming up later as well from the last batch. So Beatrice has just put the link there in the chat for the wish list section of the Buy Me a Coffee page. That's where you can find the current community funded tour pots that you can contribute to. So let me tell you a little bit about where we are. Market Bosworth. I like saying the name of it, it's a great name. And it's in Leicestershire, so we are in the middle part of England. I'm about 25 to 30 miles northeast of Birmingham. I'm in the county of Leicestershire, so Leicester is the closest big city to here, not a long way from Derby and Nottingham as well, though three East Midlands cities all pretty close together. Market Bosworth is a town of about just under 2,500 people, so quite a small place, but it is a town, not a village. The reason it's a town, not a village, is because of that first part of its name, Market. Originally it was just called Bosworth, but then it had a market charter, and then it was known as Market Bosworth, and so it's had a market for hundreds of years, and that's why it is a town, because a place that had a market was what differentiated a town from a village in the medieval days. So hello to Marlene. It shows us tomorrow in the calendar. Oh dear, well, it's definitely today. Here we are. I'm glad you've made it. And so let me turn the camera around, because the main reason that Market Bosworth is kind of known really is because very close to here one of the most important battles in English history took place, the Battle of Bosworth, or Bosworth Field. That was back in 1485, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the battle as we go along, but we are starting by some of the war memorials that the town has. It has various ones, but this is an area where they've created kind of a memorial garden. We've got a beautiful locally made First World War memorial here, and then we've got the First World War soldier which was done for many towns have ones like this. It was done for the commemorations 100 years after the end of the First World War. And one of the things that Market Bosworth is known for, they have a big effort as a community to have beautiful floral displays later in the summer. They enter a big competition called Britain in Bloom, and they've been very successful in it over the years. And so you'll see a lot of flower beds, and some of the flowers starting to come, but some of them not quite yet. So this is the flower bed where they've specially done for this year, and that is a model of one of the landing craft that would have been taking part in the D-Day landings. And of course, 80 years commemorations of the D-Day landings coming up, 6th of June 1944, the D-Day landings. So in just a few days from now, 80 years commemorations of that. And so that's why they've chosen to focus on that. So you've got the blue flowers representing the sea with the landing craft, and then you've got the sand. So you've got the representation of the beaches there of the landings. It looks like somebody might have put it on the calendar for the wrong date then. We submit them, but we don't personally put them on. And this will later in the year develop into a floral horse, a war horse figure. And there will be flowers here by the flagpole as well later in the summer. They've got a sort of a memorial garden here that was created to commemorate those who lost their lives in both world wars, and it was a land that was kind of belonged to the local town. So this is this little grassland here is called the parish field, and it's used for various public events still to this day. And a part of that land was used in 1940 originally to have a memorial, and it was restored a few years ago by public donations. So it's a really lovely little garden, and there are information boards about the people from Market Bosworth who lost their lives in the wars. But it's a really lovely little space. There's trees and bushes, there's some nice little benches, and a lovely arbour here with some great floral colours already coming in. Beautiful roses already coming in. A little bit like the roses in our garden, the rambling rose that we've got in our garden is beautiful white, and it's just starting to come into flower. A lovely pink here in the War Memorial Garden. So fantastic roses. Now I need to. This is open. I came in through the other way earlier, and I thought it's closed, but it's just a bit stiff, the gate. It's working fine. So we're going to sort of loop back around and end up quite close to here, and I'll be telling you a little bit about a bit more about the Battle of Bosworth. But the Battle of Bosworth was very important in English history because it was fought between King Richard III of England, and he was trying to defend his crown. He was the last king of the Yorkist line. So it was the period of English history that we refer to as the Wars of the Roses, when the red rose of the House of Lancaster and the white rose of the House of York, these two kind of branches of the royal family that were battling over many decades for control. And Richard was the last of the Yorkist kings, and this was where he was attacked by the Lancastrian claimant Henry Tudor, who did win the battle and became Henry VII. So it ushered in the Tudor dynasty, and it's largely seen as marking the end of medieval England, and the Tudors bring in the Renaissance, and we start to get towards the modern world a little bit. And I want to show you something that we might see a few times, but this is a great place to show you. All of the street signs, or most of the street signs in Market Bosworth, They all feature one of the emblems of the two factions that were fighting in that battle back in 1485. So this is the Red Dragon, of course, a Welsh symbol. Henry Tudor was Welsh. The Tudors were a Welsh family, and so that was his insignia on the battlefield. And very soon we'll see another street that has the insignia of Richard III. And the town was here then. I mean, but the town itself had no significance in the fact that the battle took place here. The battle took place here because this was the area where Richard III's army kind of marched to, and where they intercepted the advancing army of Henry Tudor. So that was, there was no significance to the town itself in the fact that the battle took place here. It was just kind of a coincidence. So here's Cedar Drive, and here's the insignia of Richard III, the boar. And, so another one of the flower plantings here in the shape of a butterfly. When the colours come out on that one, that's going to be a beautiful little display there. So the town started out life called Bosworth. That's an Anglo-Saxon name, and this part of a name, Worth, that meant an enclosure or a homestead of a particular group or person. So so it was, we're not sure, it's Boda or Boza, the founder. There's some debate as to whether it was a founder who it was named after, or the church, because there was what is now the parish church was in the medieval times was known to have been dedicated to a Saint Boza, a local sort of saint, holy person, and that is maybe the origin. But Bosworth, and then Market Bosworth from 1285, probably one of the best kept pieces of grass in the whole of the village, the whole of the town, sorry, the local bowling club, and they were playing on there earlier on for sure. So yes, Market was added to the name in 1285. That was when the local landowners, which is a family called the Harcourt family, they got a market charter from the king at the time, King Edward I. And ever since then it has been called Market Bosworth, and still has markets. It has farmers markets and local produce, and it did have a cattle market in the town until about 30 years ago. Now we've got to have scaffolding, of course, but the building that's under scaffolding here is a very interesting one, because this is the old rectory, and lovely brick-built building of the mid-19th century, replaced a Grand Tudor house on this site, which had also been the rectory, so where the main priest of the parish would live, and this was where the main priest of the parish lived until 1985, after which it became a private residence, and it has now been sold again, and it is being developed. It's going to be turned into a special educational needs school, so a specialist centre for 40 children from the local area with quite severe special educational needs, who need very close supervision and assistance. There's going to be 40 kids there, and 40 full-time staff teaching them and looking after them as well. So that's what that building is actually going to be all about. So it's the scaffolding is definitely for good purpose in this case. It's not just there to annoy us. It was acquired by the Leicestershire County Council. They wanted to create a new special needs centre. They said they had a lack of it in serving the rural parts of their county. So we're starting to come down into the towards the centre of the town, and we start to get some very, very pretty buildings here. This is a 19th century redevelopment of a much older house. It's kind of a theme. A lot of the houses in this town, even if they don't look really old, what you'd find is that behind the facades they would be Tudor, or maybe even older in some cases. A lot of timber framed buildings. And this particular building on the corner is site of an old bakery. It's called Bakery Cottages. And, lovely timber frame and brick combination. Bakery Cottages, Rectory Lane. Lovely historic buildings, and along this little street there's a lovely garden as well. They do have a very nice garden, but I want to show you the next houses along as well, because we've got some beautiful thatched cottages here. Look at these. The brick on the end is a replacement. The timber framing, it starts to maybe sag a little bit over the years, and needs a bit of reinforcement from time to time. And you can see the house has been extended as well. So you've got the original timber framed section here, and it's been plastered and added to over the years with the beautiful thatched roof. And as we often find on thatched roofs, oh no, Wendy's not here today. I know it's something that Wendy is particularly fascinated by, but she's in Peru at the moment, I believe. But it becomes kind of a little bit of a competition among the thatchers to have some kind of special design, and they will put an animal or bird on top. Around here, the foxes, that's the symbol of Leicestershire. So it's very much a local reference. And you know, the football team in Leicester is known as the Foxers, and it's the fox. The fox is the symbol of the county here, and this really is a beautiful cottage, isn't it? Somebody was telling me the other day why these cottages kind of bow out, and the reason is that the wood, the oak, and also why they are still okay when they bow out. The wood, the oak that they build them from, goes absolutely solid as a rock, but not straight away. And the problem is, if it's treated, or if it just kind of seasons naturally, it becomes absolutely solid. But the problem is, to work the wood as they needed to build these houses, they had to do it when the wood was freshly felled and before it had been seasoned and without treating it. So that meant that as they then subsequently treated it, or as it aged a little bit in the structure, then it started to change shape a little bit, but became then absolutely solid. So even though the walls are a little bit sort of bowed outwards and curved outwards in some places, that is why the structure is still sound. It's simply because the wood aged and reached its proper hardness only after it had actually been incorporated into the building, which is absolutely fascinating. This is a great little thatched cottage, which is now a little tiny gallery called Rainbow Cottage. And we've got the first of our little shields here. You can see 1485 to 1985. We find these dotted around the town centre, and in 1985, as you can probably imagine, they had a major event, 500 years since the battle had taken place, and as part of that, the town was decorated with these shields which represent some of the families and leaders and knights that fought at the Battle of Bosworth. So this is the Royal Standard on the left. I'm not sure who they all belong to, but it's a beautiful little cottage. No animal designs on this one, but beautiful thatched cottage. and they do have some lovely roses, so we shouldn't worry too much about their lack of animals in the thatch, because they have beautiful roses in their garden. Look at those roses, lovely, glorious red roses. Elizabeth, it looks livable. Yeah, it's a pretty good shape, isn't it? Pretty good shape. And that one with the beautiful blue sky there. Now we've got quite a big building opposite us, so all about law and order, because Market Bosworth was always quite a small town, mainly agricultural, but in the early 19th century it started to become a little bit more industrial. One of the biggest industries in the whole of the East Midlands was textiles and knitting, and that came here, and people were setting up within their homes and small workshops framework knitting machines, making stockings and clothing and all kinds of things. And so the town grew quite rapidly in the early 19th century, so it needed to have some facilities during that century built, and one of them was this complex. So the building with the large windows there is the old magistrates' court, so the old courthouse. It's now used by the local grammar school as their art department. And then here we have what is now where the local police are based, but this whole section of the building was previously the police station. Part of it was sold off a number of years ago as office space, and the police moved into just a smaller section. So this section, which is called the old jail, is actually now private offices. So you had the police house, you had the old jail that had I think 6 cells in it originally, and then the police house, and more fantastic thatched cottages here on the other side of the road as well. Aren't they great? Aren't they great? Trying to get you a nice shot there that doesn't have any cars in it. Easier said than done, because there are not many roads. That's always the same with these kind of little towns. They don't have many roads, and so when you're on one of them, all the traffic. They also have a one-way system here, so everything goes. At least you know which direction it's going to come from. So aren't these beautiful? And this was the police station as well, the police house, from the latter part of the 19th century, as the town had grown up and was starting to get more modern facilities. Now, something that's been there a lot longer than that is the Black Horse Inn, the old Black Horse. This is a former coaching inn, and we know that the building is pretty old, probably about 400 years old, and it's been an inn for most of that time, as far as we can tell. It still is today, very popular. The beer garden I mentioned earlier, very popular today, as I was getting out of the car next to it. I was very good. I resisted the temptation to go and just sit in the beer garden instead of doing the tour. There are still several pubs in the town. It used to be more. For example, over the way there we've got a sort of a little, it's not open on a Sunday evening, but in the week there's a couple of little shops in there, a little tea room. It's called the Wheatsheaf Courtyard, and that whole building was a former coaching inn called the Wheatsheaf, but nowadays converted into more modern businesses. So this is the Market Square, of Market Bosworth, and yeah, this is where there have been markets since the year 1285. In fact, the 12th of May 1285 was the first ever market on this site. That's when the charter was granted by King Edward I. And you can see it's kind of a triangular square. And no geometry geeks out there who are going to be onto me for saying a triangular square, a triangular marketplace. And They do still have a farmers market here, I think a couple of times a month, and various other local craft markets and things like that, and different festivals during the year. And we can see some of the 19th century, 18th and 19th century architecture around the square, reflecting the prosperity of the town at that time, from its agriculture and then later from its textile industry as well. There's a couple of lovely little cottages here that I want to show you. And later on we're going to see Bosworth Hall, which was the kind of the grand residence of the lords of the manor of Bosworth for many years, many centuries. And in the 19th century, a new family moved in. They were called the Tollemache Scott family. And they acquired, as part of the estate, they acquired these two cottages in the market square. They belonged to the estate, and they restored them. And because the family was of joint English and Scottish heritage, they had one of them adorned with the rose for England and one of them adorned with the thistle for Scotland, and they're known as Rose and Thistle cottages, even though the tea room that is called Maison Rose is actually in Thistle Cottage. But they can call their tea room what they want, I guess. Very interesting shop on the market square. You don't see this very often. Look, the clock shop. Watches and clocks for sale. Interesting opening times there. Monday to Saturday 9 till 2. So they're not busting a gut. And then they've got an old set your watch by electric time over the door there, which I think is pretty cool. So one of the lovely buildings on the market square is this one with the flag flying. Well, the flag looks like it's been used at the Battle of Bosworth. Actually, it's in pretty bad shape. But this building was built in its current form as a bank in the 1890s. It had previously been the site of the medieval town lockup, which was dated back to the 16th century, and then in the early part of the 19th century, that lockup was converted into the very first police station of the town. But when the police moved to the larger building that we saw, then a bank was built here instead. It's no longer a bank, it is part of the school which is adjacent to it, and I'm trying to work out now that, of course, since I stood here earlier and worked out where I was going to show you the school from, the sun has moved, or the sun's not moved, the earth's moved, but the sun is coming from a different angle. So this building is the grammar school. It's called the Dixie Grammar School, nothing to do with jazz. The Dixie family were a very wealthy family who became lords of the manor here, and they were lords of the manor from 1567 until 1885. So well over 350 years, and they were considerable benefactors of the town. And one of the things they did, there was a record of a school in Market Bosworth from 1320 onwards, but I think it was probably quite, if it was even still existing, in pretty poor repair. And the town school was refounded in 1601 by Sir Wolston Dixie, who was the first member of that family to be involved with the town here. The building we see today was from the 19th century. The 1820s was built to replace the sort of late medieval school building. It's still a school to this day. It is an independent school, so fee paying, costs for nursery level, so really nursery for your kids, preschool, kindergarten age, costs £3,900 per term. So that's 3 of those lots a year. And the senior school goes up in fees until you get to about £5,500 per term. It's not a residential school, as far as I know. They maybe have some residential students, but that's just the fees for attending it. They've had a couple of interesting people associated with it. Dr. Samuel Johnson of dictionary fame. In 1733, Dr. Johnson worked here for a short time as a schoolmaster. It was not an experience that he particularly looked back on very fondly. He wrote that he wasn't sure who had the most unhappy time, him teaching there or the students who had to put up with him teaching there. I think we've all had teachers like that, haven't we? But one of the other a former student who grew up in this area and attended school in the Dixie School was was a man by the name of Thomas Hooker. And Thomas Hooker was a Puritan preacher, quite a radical preacher, who got into trouble with the religious authorities here. So he went to the Netherlands, and then eventually he headed over to Massachusetts. And in Massachusetts, he was the first rector of the town of Cambridge, Massachusetts. And then when things were not going so, there was some controversy over which religious groups got to vote, got to participate in the political process in Massachusetts. So he and a few other people went away and they founded a new colony in North America. They founded the colony of Connecticut. And Thomas Hooker drew up the Constitution of Connecticut, which was believed to be the first ever written constitution in history that established a democratic government. And it was used as a basis when they were coming to draw up a constitution for the US and some of the things they were going to include. So he was really one of the fathers of American democracy, educated right here in Market Bosworth. And I'm not going to go around where we can see the plaque over the door properly. That plaque was created when this school was built, but it contains the school's motto. The original motto was a Latin motto, but the modern rendition of it, the school's motto, is "A good education is a gift that lasts forever." And I think we can probably all agree with that one. And if you go to that school, it's a very expensive gift that lasts forever. Okay, so we started with some war memorials. The town's main war memorial is actually this one here in the Market Square, which was unveiled in 1920 to commemorate those who lost their lives. 19 young men from Market Bosworth lost their lives in World War I, and 11 men and 1 woman in the Second World War. But there's another memorial here as well, and that is here, and it's a modern one. And that is this plaque, which tells us that on the 22nd of March 2015, the funeral procession of King Richard III stopped here in Bosworth, because this is the town adjacent to the battlefield where he was killed. And on his way to his final resting place, all those years later in Leicester Cathedral, the cortege stopped here, and the coffin was placed on this spot for a brief ceremony. And of course, Richard III, after the battle, his body was mutilated. It was stripped naked and thrown over the back of a horse, taken to Leicester, where it was put on public display, and then it was buried in the monastery of Greyfriars. And interestingly enough, the man who defeated him at the battle, a couple of years later, King Henry VII, he paid for a memorial to Richard III above his gravesite in the Greyfriars Monastery. But it didn't stay there for long, because Henry VII's son, Henry VIII, broke from Rome, closed down all the monasteries in England. So the Greyfriars Church was destroyed, and the land was used for other things over the years. But there was always a suspicion that remains of that church and the remains of Richard III were still under there somewhere. And in 2012, there was a project from Leicester University to excavate the site of the former Greyfriars Monastery and Church. And it was while doing that in a place where previous historians and archaeologists had actually predicted, they discovered remains which proved by DNA testing of descendants through the female line to be the remains of King Richard III. And so that was why in 2015 he was buried with full ceremony in Leicester Cathedral, and the procession through the county of Leicester stopped here in Bosworth, fittingly, as this was where he was killed. You know, it's an amazing story. You know, the king under the car park, as it became known, it made headlines around the world. It was sort of a huge story, as you can imagine. And you know, they trace the descent through the maternal line. I think it was a 16 times great niece in Canada that they first identified, but she subsequently passed away, and they did the DNA testing on her son, who was called Michael Ibsen, and that matched. One of the interesting results of them doing this is that Richard III was the first known named historical figure to ever have his entire genome sequenced. They've done it with ancient remains that they found, but they haven't known who those people were. So quite an interesting story all round, really, isn't it? That he might have lost that battle, but he's had this whole other fame many years later. They found that the body showed signs of 10 serious battlefield wounds, some of which might have been actually inflicted after he was dead as kind of a humiliation thing. They also discovered, of course, that he had a curvature of the spine, which is thought to have been the basis of the idea that was sort of emphasised by Shakespeare in his Richard III play, that Richard III was a hunchback. He didn't have a hunchback, he had a curved spine. But of course, Shakespeare was writing for his audience. His audience was the court of Tudor England, and the Tudors would want to portray Richard III as a person who deserved to lose his crown and to have that crown taken over by the Tudor dynasty. So, you know, there was a lot of politics at play there. Shakespeare knew, I think we can say, he knew which side his bread was buttered on, as we say. He knew where the money was coming from. So here's the oldest pub in the town. Might not look like it because the facade that we see is 19th century, but within that facade is a 16th century timber framed building. Parts of it are even 200 years older than that, and it's been an inn for many hundreds of years. It has original flagstone flooring from the 16th century, an original fireplace from the 16th century, and I can confirm from, not today, but from a previous visit here, that they do very nice food as well. So let's head on up. Now we're on the other side of the town, one-way system. You see, spend your whole life waiting for young ladies with the car top down to wave to you, and then it happens when you've been married for 20 years. You know? Nobody ever used to do that when I was 20 years old. You know? Donna, any ghost stories in the pub? Not that I know of, but there is a ghost story that in one of the places we're going to see. So that'll be coming up very soon. So across the way is a building that used to be, it's called the Old Forge. And this was actually a forge that was in use by a local blacksmith until about 40 years ago, I think. Still a blacksmith working there. Pretty amazing. And this whole area where the forge, the metalworking was done, it's now private apartments. We got some more fantastic little cottages here on this side of the road. Again, they've had a plaster facade put on them. that was very much the style later, but they are 17th century cottages. A lovely little row of cottages here, aren't they? Yeah, fantastic. We've got a couple of very quite interesting buildings here as well. This was the town post office, which now doubles. They do still have a post office run by the local community, and that building doubles as the parish hall. So they have entertainments, amateur theatre, dancers, concerts, those kinds of things. And one more fascinating building before we go and look at the church here. This is an old school. This is a late 19th century primary school building, which has been converted into a house, and it's called, imaginatively enough, the Old School. But that's what a lovely place to live that is. So let's go and have a look at St. Peter's Church, and it's called St. Peter's Church. The original Anglo-Saxon church on this site was called the Church of Bosworth. And that goes back to the sort of the origin of the town and its name. But St. Peter's was the medieval church that was built here. And when we get to see the church, we will see that it's been modernised and restored over the years, but it's essentially a 14th and 15th century structure that was begun in 1325, and somebody, I think, might be having some barbecue or some lovely cooking some meat. There's a delicious aroma here. I can't see any smoke though. Hello. So here's St. Peter's Church. What a gorgeous church. And you know, the tower, the spire is a real local landmark. The town centre is kind of on top of a little hill, and you can see the spire. In the winter time you can see it even better because there's no leaves on all the trees, but even at this time of year, as you drive along towards the town, you kind of can see all the trees, and then above them you can see the top of St. Peter's Church tower. And the clock on there is a more modern one, but they did have a very early clock. They had a clock in the 16th century, which was made by one of England's first clockmakers, who happened to be from this particular part of the country. And obviously the parish church clock was really important because it was the only clock in the village. So that everybody who wanted to take their time, they would look at the clock tower of the church, and they'd be able to then, you know, that would decide on the life and the cycle of the town and the way that everybody was organising themselves. So very important they had such an early church clock. So we should be able to get an even nicer view of the church looking back in a moment. And then I'll there, that's a lovely building, isn't it? And then we are going to head out of the churchyard because I want to show you the other pillar of Market Bosworth's local life. So the church, very, very important, the market, the commercial life, the religious life, but then you had the people who owned all the land around here, the people who collected the taxes, and the people who financed a lot of the work that was done in the town over the centuries, and they lived at Bosworth Hall. Now the original lords of the manor after the Norman conquest were the Earls of Leicester, so they didn't live here, they just owned all the lands around here. But part of those lands came through marriage to a family called the Harcourts, and the Harcourts from the early 13th century until the early 16th century were the lords of the manor here, and so at the time of the Battle of Bosworth, the Harcourts lived here, and it was the Harcourt family that got the Market Charter in 1285 and were here when the church was built, so would have been involved in the financing of St Peter's Church. They lived in a medieval manor house, a moated manor house, which in the 13th century was very fashionable. It was kind of very much the thing at the time to have yourself a nice hall and to make it on an island with a moat around it. So not necessarily for defensive purposes specifically, it was just the fashion. Part of that moat remains, although nothing of that house remains. So this is the moat from the medieval Bosworth Hall, where the Harcourt family lived. I'm going to wait a moment. No, well, the Harcourt family, after the Harcourt family, the lands passed to the Grey family, a very influential family in England, to a branch of the Grey family. But that was in the early 16th century. But as you may know, you may have heard of Lady Jane Grey, 9 Days Queen. There was a plot to put Lady Jane Grey on the throne to succeed Edward VI during Tudor era. And obviously when that didn't come to anything, Lady Jane Grey was executed and all of the Grey family fell from grace, even the other branches that weren't really anything to do with it, and that included the Greys here at Market Bosworth, and they had the lands confiscated, and the new Queen, Mary I, she gave the lands to a loyal supporter called Edward Hastings, who sold it. He sold the lands here, he sold all of the rights and privileges that went with being Lord of the Manor of Market Bosworth. He sold them to the Dixie family, who I mentioned when we were at the grammar school. And the Dixie family, 1567, they came here. In 1660, they got a title from King Charles II. They became barons. Hello, Leonie, here. And in 1682, they built themselves a new version of Bosworth Hall, and here it is. This is Bosworth Hall, 1682. Beautiful building, isn't it? These days it is a very, very nice hotel and spa, but you can just kind of have a little wander onto the front lawn, which is very nice. For us anyway. I don't know what the guests think, but still. And this Dixie family. Now, there's a very interesting story about the 4th Baron Dixie, because he had a daughter called Anna, and his daughter Anna fell in love with a local young lad who was the son of a local farmer. So her father, thought, no way is this chap good enough for my daughter. So rather than have a word with him, warn him off, maybe even try and pay him off, the 4th Baron decided he was going to take a little bit of more direct action. He knew that the two of them had been meeting on the family's lands. So he'd been coming from the farm where they were, and he knew which way they'd be coming. So he had a man trap installed on his lands to catch this suitor, and they thought that might, I don't know whether they intended to kill him or, to scare him off or whatever. But essentially it backfired in spectacular fashion, because it was not the suitor who fell into the man trap, it was the daughter Anna. She was carried severely injured back to the house, where she unfortunately bled to death. According to the house's legends, there is a blood stain on the ceiling of one of the floors on one of the rooms below where she died, where there is a stain that nobody was ever able to get out of that ceiling. And her ghost is also said to haunt the grounds of Bosworth Hall ever since. Now, she was a very unfortunate member of the Dixie family, but one of the last members of the Dixie family to live here before they sold the place in 1885 was a lady called Lady Florence Dixie. She was Scottish originally, married into the family, and she was a very keen traveller, adventurer and travel writer. She wrote best-selling travel books about travels in Patagonia and Southern Africa. One of the first female international travel writers, really, that we'd seen in that 19th century. She was also a novelist, wrote novels for adults and children, and she also actually was very wrote belief in equality for men and women extended to her love of sport. She organised some of the first ever ladies football matches that had been seen in England. So football was still, quite a new sport in the form we know it today, but she organised matches for men and women and campaigned for women to be able to play football alongside men. I hope the signal's okay, should be okay now. I'm getting a full reading. And she was actually the first president of the British Women's Football Association. So the Dixie family sold the house in 1885, and they sold it to a family called the Ptolemaic Scott family, and they built this structure. The Ptolemaic Scott family built it in 1885. They built this structure, which is known as the Water Tower, but it is actually thought to be a hunting lookout tower, because people have said that the statue on the front, they've identified that with the goddess of the hunt, Diana, and it faces out over the old hunting park, the old deer park that belonged to the estate. And it was part of the new garden developments that family made, as was this sort of stone gateway there, which led in on this spot was a huge complex of greenhouses. So obviously mainly out of glass and iron, and they're all gone, but you still have the stone entranceway and this tower that was at the back of them. So let's make our way back through this little wood, and I'll thank you, Nadia. Hope your guests have a lovely time. We've just got a few minutes to go, and I'm going to take you over to Lady Florence Dixie. Leslie, yeah, what a fascinating lady she was. I'm just wondering where exactly this signal dropped, because I didn't see any evidence of it, but it's probably around here somewhere, I would suspect. Yeah. Yep. Yep, I think we're back up to speed now. Yeah, I think it was just under the trees by the wall there. It's quite closed in. To give you an idea, the readings I get, so now I'm getting a good reading, 3869. When that buffered a little bit, it went down to 2,500. When I had the issues in Oxford last week, it was 31. So yeah, we really had issues there, didn't we? And it must have been an issue over the whole city, because when I was had abandoned that tour, I was getting on the bus to go back to where I'd parked the car, and I tried to get my bus ticket up on the app, and I couldn't get the app up. I had to buy a new bus ticket to get me back to the car. There's no signal anywhere in Oxford. So here's a little sculpture of a deer, because this was the start of the deer park, the hunting area that belonged to the estate, the Bosworth Hall estate, and it represents a roe deer, and they had quite a rare type of roe deer, black roe deer, which I'd never even heard of really. I've heard of roe deer, but they had black roe deer. It was the only hunting park in the area with this unusual type of deer in it. And as you can imagine, various generations of those lords of the manor. It does look real, doesn't it? Yes, when you see it from a distance standing under the tree there, it does look very real. So we've almost come full circle and we're almost at the end, and I'm fully aware that Leonie has come to keep an eye on me to make sure I don't cut into her time, so I'm not going to do that. And I did say that I'd start by mentioning Bosworth's fame for the battle and finish with a little bit about the battle. So, you know, the two armies came together here about 2 miles away from where we are now. Basically from here there's a huge country park open to the public on the old deer park of the Bosworth estate. Then you get into farmland, nowadays enclosed fields. But in 1485 it was open land. You know, agriculture was done on open land. That's where the armies came together. Richard III's army initially had the advantage of numbers, but the key to the battle was the actions of Lord Stanley. Lord Stanley had committed to fight for his king Richard, but his family had very close links to Henry Tudor, to his family, and he was kind of wavering, and on the day of the battle his huge section of the army switched sides. They went over from Richard's side to Henry's. It shifted the advantage in favour of Henry Tudor's army. He also had some great commanders. He didn't command it himself. Richard III got involved in the heart of the fighting. He'd always been a warrior, fighting for his brother Edward IV earlier in the Wars of the Roses, you know, and he was at the heart of the fighting. But he was cut down. His crown was thrown from his head into a bush. It was retrieved, and when Henry Tudor rode up with his retinue, it was placed upon his head and he was crowned as Henry VII. And it was a real turning point in English history, because, you know, when you think of all the things that happened when the Tudors were on the throne of England, England moved away from being under the Catholic Church in Rome, started to build its global trading empire, exploration of new territories, the age of the Renaissance of Shakespeare and the other great writers, artists, composers of that age. It was a hugely important age, and the Tudors were on the throne throughout all of it, and they came to the throne because of what happened just a short distance away, just a cannon's shot from where we're standing now. And this lovely country park here is a beautiful place for the local people, isn't it? And that is where we are going to end today. And I'm going to finish with that lovely scenery behind me. And I'm going to say a huge thank you to you all for joining us. And I hope you've enjoyed this one. And I hope it's been another, you know, these little towns, amazing that a little place can have so many fantastic links to history, so many stories, so much has happened there, and be so pretty to look at as well. So thank you so much everyone for being here and contributing to this. And don't forget, we've got some more of these tours coming up. On Thursday we have the next of the community funded tours, which is the boat trip in Stratford, 3 p.m. I'm sorry it's a little bit early in the day, but they close just after 4, so we need to get the boat back to them before they close, otherwise I might get accused of piracy or something. And we've got the Cotswold one coming soon. Beatrice has put the link up for the Padlet page, which has got links to all of my upcoming tours. So we've got some As Live tours coming up. We've got the 2 As Live tours in London, which are Harry Potter locations, but not just if you've never seen a Harry Potter movie, you will still enjoy them, I promise you, because we see some great places in London, and I'll tell you some stories that have nothing to do with Harry Potter movies as well. We have the wish list link there as well, where you can contribute to the next community funded tours. Bewdley, which is a beautiful town on the River Severn, and another Cotswold one that we can build up and then go somewhere else in the Cotswolds. So Beatrice has also put a link to the Buy Me a Coffee page to the shop where you can book all of the upcoming tours. The next thing you can actually see me doing here on my independent channels, Tuesday afternoon, if you're on the Restless platform, I'm doing a talk, the next one in my Houses of History talk. We're going to be talking a lot about Charles II. But Tuesday evening, we have our next interview, our next Everybody Has a Story interview, and it's going to be the lovely Linda Bornsheim from New York. I'm sure many of you know from your virtual travels and from how active she is in the community online. Linda's very kindly agreed to join me. She's sent me her photos already. She's been super organised, and so that's on Tuesday evening. You can find that on the Buy Me a Coffee page as well. Well, the grass has been cut here, definitely. So thank you, Beatrice, for putting those tours up. Thank you, Beatrice and Claire, for doing technical support, and thank you all of you for being here. Definitely head over and see what Leonie's got to tell you about this evening if you can. I'm sure she'll love to have you there, and I will see you again very soon, hopefully on Tuesday or maybe Thursday or maybe Sunday. Take care, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your evening. Thank you very much. Bye for now.